And welcome into another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. Today we got a feast full of topics. Week 2 recap. We got the ramifications of the long-term IR for Iafallo. Should there be some line changes? The bet stamp player of the week. And as always, making it rain. Stay tuned, like, subscribe, get in the chat. Let's go. All right, guys. All right. Another week of Kings hockey down a little further in the season. But before we get started on that, got to talk to my co-host here, Russell and Joe. How you guys doing? Let's start with Russell. A week removed from the Dodgers loss. I don't mean to reopen a wound there, but you getting fully healed there? Are you ready to go? Moving on?
I think the Padres losing kind of made a little bit Dodger fans feel a little bit better about themselves. So that helps.
The enemy of my enemy.
Ring the bell. That's what everyone's saying out here.
And Joe, your Yankees got destroyed. No way to put it about that. And then Aaron Judge is moving to California. So how are you feeling?
I don't do well with losing. I don't do well with the Yankees. Like with hockey, when the Kings are not in the playoffs, I just love watching the playoffs, right? So I'll keep watching.
Yeah.
When the Yankees lose, I'm a bad loser. I'm bitter. And I will not watch. What I'll watch is when like there's a clinching. I'll see who wins, right? The World Series. I'll watch the clinching game, but I'm bitter. Pardon me, but it's a shitstorm in Yankee land these days with Boone and Steinbrenners and Michael Kay absolutely shredded the organization, rightfully so. What a disaster. Just complete and utter embarrassment. They struck out 400 times in 4 games. It's a joke. Let's get to a different subject, please.
The wound is not yet healed on that one. Definitely not healed. Sorry I brought it up. Yeah, my day's going good, man. Off day from slinging that metal. Made some taco soup, went out and did some errands. Met with a friend. Hello, Alyssa. We had some drinks before coming on here, ready to talk some Kings hockey. So let's get it going, guys. Let's get it going. Week 2 recap. It seems the Kings went 1-3, got destroyed by Pittsburgh, a tough loss in Washington, but then showed out in Tampa. Let's start out with the rest of the road trip. The road trip looked promising at last podcast. The team wasn't playing supremely well. They were finding ways to win. The tail end of it, though, was atrocious. I mean, I couldn't remember being more disappointed in how this road trip ended. I don't know if you guys feel any differently or if there's some bright spots you want to take from it, Russell, but what were your thoughts on the tail end of that bad boy?
No, I think you summed it up perfectly. There wasn't a lot of bright spots to take away from the road trip. I mean, besides obviously the 3 wins, you appreciate the record going 3-2, getting 6 points out of 10 on a early season 5-game road trip. But the way they did it and the way they played it, it just didn't bring you a lot of hope in terms of how they were going to start the rest of the season. The Pittsburgh game, I guess you just look at the end of the Nashville game where Cal Peterson just played strong at the 3rd period and into this overtime and shootout. So like we talked about on this podcast last week, I mean, you just had to roll. I mean, you had to roll with Cal going into Pittsburgh. And sure enough, it just bit us all in the ass, and he gives up 3 goals in the first period, and they end up putting in quick. It was just terrible effort there, and everybody was kind of in the dumps after that game. 6-1 loss. Nothing looked good there. You go into Washington feeling pretty good going into the 3rd period, and sure enough, the Capitals put up a 4th spot in the 3rd frame, and just was kind of a cherry on top of a lackluster road trip, I guess. So I mean, there wasn't a lot of good takeaways from the roadie. The defense wasn't good, goaltending wasn't good. I mean, there was some scoring, but it just didn't look like the Kings hockey that we've been accustomed to lately. I mean, it was a roller coaster road trip, I guess, to say the least.
So, Joe, I want to ask you this question because I think I've been talking about this with some Kings fans. Does this team look bad because we're not used to seeing a Kings team be non-defensively sound? or is this Kings team just looked bad and our eyes are not deceiving us?
No, I think they've looked bad. I think that's fair. And I think they've admitted as much. The quotes after the Pittsburgh game from McClellan, he used the quote. I think it was probably more so in regards to the goaltending, but he acknowledged that he said, I'm not going to bullshit you. Everybody's got to be better. So I think he's pretty straightforward with that. I don't know. I wasn't that upset. Like, it's early days. It's early in the season. You look around the league, there's a lot of teams with chaos right now. Look at the Minnesota Wild. Look at the Vancouver Canucks. There's a lot of teams right now that are all over the map that are trying to find their way, trying to find their structure. So it's not that surprising, and I think we talked about it in the last show or the show before. How many either new guys into the lineup are there, or first-year guys into the lineup, or guys returning from injury, guys playing their offside, to think they're just going to hit the ground running out of camp? No. So I wasn't at all upset about the Pittsburgh game, honestly. Like, sometimes that happens. They played great in the first period, particularly the first 10 minutes. And, again, I have no issues with Cal starting the game. I think he should have, and it didn't go well. And sometimes you just got beaten up. But the Washington game was far more disappointing. You've got a 2-goal lead going into the third, and you let that slip. That one stings a little bit to end the road trip. But the response at home against Tampa, that's how you want to do that. So all in all, you take the 3-2 and you move on.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Washington was the one that pissed me off the most. You have a chance to clean up. I mean, the road trip looks way better, right? I think recency bias has a huge play into it. A lot of these Kings fans, including myself, have lots of questions on this season going forward. If they can pick up even a point or 2 points in Washington and go the road trip with 8 points, and you're like, okay, we've had 5 games, we got 8 out of 10. Like, yeah, this team's struggling, but they're finding ways to win. We can correct some of these things. We'll be a juggernaut. And this leaves a sour taste in your mouth. Did you have more questions because they came back and beat us, or were your questions just confirmed? Like, how did that make you feel after Washington?
Well, for me, what was frustrating was, for as just porous as particularly the second, between the goaltending and then just the last 2 periods against Pittsburgh, where the first 2 periods against Washington were kind of just what the doctor ordered. Slow it down, low event hockey. You've got a 2-goal lead. Quick is playing well. It's like, this is exactly what we needed to see from a team that just gave up 6 the game before. So it was disappointing to see just some breakdowns. I don't know that it was a total collapse. I think Washington was definitely the better team in that third period. They were, but I was
it
very
was a collapse. Yes.
Yeah, it was. I was very frustrated in that third period because the way it was just totally different than the first 2 periods. But I don't want to. I wasn't going to overreact to the 1 period, but to get out of that game, as you said, with a point would have felt a lot better going home. But I guess hindsight being 2020, as we sit here today, we have the luxury of sitting here after the win against Tampa. So that really kind of erases any kind of sour taste, I think, from that Washington letdown. So, right or wrong, that's how I feel.
So when we look at the division standings right now, you're looking at we're 4th. We're tied with Seattle, right, with 8 points. We both have 8 games played. So, I mean, as bad as this team has looked, I mean, there's obviously a good chance at positive skies ahead. We saw that a little bit in the Tampa Bay game. Let's bring it to there. Russ, you obviously were there at the game. What did you see from the Kings in that game that maybe we haven't seen this season so far? Because it seemed like one of the most complete games we played so far this season.
We saw them establish that 1-3-1 neutral zone that we saw so many times last season, limiting shots to their opponent, limiting high danger chances while getting their own chances themselves. I tweeted out a picture earlier today that just showed exactly what, the 1-3-1 is. It's forcing dump-ins is what it is, and that's what the Kings were doing. I believe in the third period at 5-on-5, the Lightning only had 2 shots on goal. And especially coming off the game in Washington where it seemed like it was all in the player's mind quite a bit, giving up those 4 goals in the third period. They wanted to come out and finish the third period against Tampa Bay strong, and that's exactly what we saw. So it was good for them to kind of not just get the lead, but hold on to the lead and continue to play that strong type of game that we've seen them play towards the end of the year last year. So, I mean, you saw a full 60 out of the Kings, and that's kind of what we were hoping for after that lackluster road trip.
So, Joe, you texted us in our little group chat before this. You feel like the D pairs have settled in a little bit and are looking better. They're looking more accustomed to their partners. Did you see that in this game, and that's where it started, or has it kind of been? Did it start in the Tampa game where you kind of felt that presence from the top six, or?
I wouldn't say it's where it started. Pretty much since they kind of have established, I think that okay, Dursey is the best of that Dursey, Clark, Walker to play with Roy on the second pair. And once Edler came back, you can just clearly see that Walker is 7. Like he has, which we kind of thought could be the case, but the way Clark has played, he is 7. I just think that, we're seeing the team that D-core gets settled in, knowing, okay, here's where everybody's slotting in. So I don't think it started with this game but it pretty much started when Edler got back from his injury. And then as they played into this game, and we talked about the Dursey-Roy duo in a small sample last season, had some pretty good outputs. They've looked good so far, contrary to, I think, many people's beliefs, but they've performed pretty well, at least under the hood. When you look at some of the possession numbers, they're one of the better defensive pairs in the league right now. So, and that's despite Dursey playing on his offside. So, yeah, I think this is good. It creates a little bit of stability, right? Because coming into the season, you had some guys. You had Dursey, who was going to play that left side. How many games is Clark going to get? Where's Walker going to fit? Then Edler gets hurt. So you're kind of all over the place. And to have a settled 6 and a settled 3 pairs, I would not underestimate that as to being a factor in coming off and playing the best team game, knowing that these D pairs have had a few games in a row to kind of play together and get comfortable with each other. Because again, you've got 2 of the 3 pairs are more or less brand new. Like I know Dursey and Roy played together last year, but it wasn't a significant amount. And Clark and Edler is a brand new pair. So you got to give these guys a little bit of time to get settled in and to learn the system and to learn each other and their tendencies and whatnot. So I think that having stability on the back end is very important.
Yeah, Carter Scores coming in there saying best team game of the season, not even close. Thank you guys in the chat. CJ coming in. Hello, everyone. Rain up 1-0 with a Kupari goal. 17 left to go in the first period. If you're not following McGinnis and Kyle on Twitter, follow that. They're doing our rain coverage this year, doing a fantastic job. Follow them right now. Let's get into this Lightning game a little bit, some of the nuances that happen within this game that might be definitive of what's going on first. And Joe, the power play expert that you are coming in here, did you guys like that Byfield was parked in front of Vasilevsky on the power play 2 last game? He was effective even though a goal wasn't scored. Did you agree with Carter that he was effective, or do you think that he was too lazy in front of the net?
I agree that he was effective. I disagree with what my man Carter Scores is saying there, because if you watch, and I was watching a lot of clips today because I was watching some Byfield shifts again today, I thought he looked great down low. Maybe great's a little heavy. He looked very good down low. He looked comfortable down low. Let me say that. He wasn't just parked in front of the net, though. There's a play in the 3rd period, I want to say, where the play shifts up. He moves over to the front of the net, and he puts his stick out like this, like, give me the puck, right? They move the puck down to him, and he makes a play toward the front of the net. So he wasn't just parked in front of the net, which everybody that listens knows I hate. There's times for that. Don't get me wrong. Like, there's times where you want to be that body in front of the net, but not just stuck there and stapled to the ice. Move, make yourself available for a down low option, which he did, and he did it behind the net. And I think he created some scoring chances out of it. So, yes, I liked him down low, and I hope he doesn't stay glued to the front of the net, to the top of the crease. And I don't think he will. I think he looked good.
Russ, do you agree with that? Do you think that's a fit for him going forward, and that's where he should play on a power play with his size and his hands down low?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially considering how long Victor Arvidsson will be out. I was actually pleasantly surprised that they were putting Byfield in that spot. I didn't really expect McClellan to kind of give him. I mean, that seems like a pretty big spot to be in, that down low position. There's a lot of lot of responsibility down there in terms of being an open
which
player.
is great. That player
Yeah,
was
exactly.
useless last season. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you have to make yourself open and give your teammates a chance to provide give an opportunity scoring chance down low, because we didn't see that really at all last season. So with Victor Arvidsson out as a late scratch in last night's game, to get Byfield in on some power play minutes, I think that's huge for his development. I mean, we've all been craving for Byfield to get some more playing time, let alone some power play time. So now that he was given that opportunity, I thought he looked, like Joe said, I thought he looked comfortable. And depending on how long Arvidsson is out, maybe we see him there a little bit longer.
What I thought was interesting, because again, I went back and watched all of Byfield's shifts today. It was the lowest ice time he's played all season, despite playing power play and penalty kill. He didn't have a shift. And I don't know, Russ, if I didn't hear anything or see anything that came up. He didn't have a shift in the final 8 minutes of the game.
Probably the face-off violation. That's maybe McClellan was giving him a little bit. I don't know. I mean, the team was playing pretty well. I'm sure McClellan liked the way the second line was playing, the first line was playing. You know, he's always leaning on those top guys as it is. So
yeah, and it's just when you hear, and that's probably the case of, I think at the time it was still 3-1. So he's like, we have a chance to really win this game. And I think part of it too is you watch these games live, and this is why I like to go back and watch a lot after the fact. There's so much you miss live. You're watching the game, you're caught up in the game. You don't even realize, wait a minute, I haven't seen Byfield the last 8 minutes of the game. So, but yeah, anyways, yes, he should be on the power play down low on the second unit. I thought he looked very good.
Carter comes in. Are you guys surprised that Arvidsson was a scratch last game? He was scratched because of illness, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I guess in the morning skate, there was a possibility that he wasn't going to play. It was the same, I guess it's the same illness he's been kind of dealing with during the road trip. He felt better. After the pregame skate, he felt good. He took the warm-up, and then after warm-up, he just, I guess, didn't feel good after that. So Anderson Dolan just kind of was a surprise addition to the lineup, and I thought Jad looked pretty good. I mean, first game of the season, his underlying advanced stats didn't look too great, but he was noticeable in the shifts he had and drove play. So I thought it was a pretty good season debut for Anderson Dolan.
Yeah, I did too. I like the way he played. I think he needs to get more games. There needs to be a solid rotation until somebody solidifies. Right there, we talked about the rotation with the defensemen, and we'll talk about the Clark train coming up here in a second. But the defense has kind of solidified itself over the first couple games there, and I think that the rotation with Lemieux and Jad and whoever needs to kind of solidify itself. So hopefully we'll see that happen. I think Jared Anderson-Dolan, it brings a lot to the team. Like we talked about, he's a guy that can play in the bottom nine wherever you need him to be. He has attributes that are effective in whatever kind of role you want him to play. He's not great at anything, but he's good at a lot of things, to where he's a serviceable plug and play jigsaw piece.
Versatile.
And I think that he needs to get more ice time, because he's also that kind of guy on the Reign last season where, because he was playing all the time, we saw his offensive game take that next level.
Yep.
And you're not going to get that by playing 10 minutes a night, 5-on-5 with nothing else, right? So hopefully he gets some more shakedown in there. But a guy that has gotten his shakedown, Carter Scores comes in. Did that Clark train pass to Lizotte solidify a spot for the rest of the season? He says yes. I say yes. I think that it would be a waste for him to go back to the OHL. I don't think there's any question at this point, unless Rob Blake is just blindly making phone calls. No offense, Blakey. I think he's done enough to remain up here. Russ, what do you think?
Yeah, I think he's made it known that he should stay even before that pass. He's looked comfortable. He's not looked out of place. He's making the same plays that we've seen him make all throughout summer during the rookie face-off and dev camp. I mean, he's showing he's the type of player that we've all kind of expected him to be, even in the limited amount of ice time that he's playing. I mean, the thing is, too, is like, if you send him back, who's playing in that spot for Brent Clark? I mean, yeah, you can bring up Jordan Spence, but do you want Jordan Spence to be the main, be playing a full season in the NHL right now? Probably not. I mean, he looked good in 24 games last year, but I wouldn't want him playing on the Kings, in the Kings lineup this whole year. And then you have to have Sean Walker left. So, I mean, right now, Brant Clark is the best option. It's not just because you like what you're seeing. He's the best option for the Kings on that third pair with Edler. And playing him with Alex Edler, it sucked that Edler had to miss a couple games, but now that he's back, I think that pairing has solidified that bottom six, I guess, the bottom pair for the defensive side on the Kings.
So, Joe, we were talking about a little bit earlier in a couple podcasts ago about how many games Edler would be good to play, right? I think it ranged from half the season up to 70 games. You were at the high end. Now that we're seeing this third pair solidify, do you think you're correct? Do you think he's going to need to play close to 65, 70 games for the Kings to be effective?
Yeah. I think right now, given their current construct of the D, absolutely. I mean, they may find a spot to rest him if there's a long trip or a tough back-to-back or a tough stretch of games maybe. But if he's healthy, he's going to play. I don't think this is any situation where they're going to be kind of, every other game or any sort of rotation with Alex Edler. He's going to play until he can't, physically. So
now, is that because that T-Mac doesn't love the tuna as much as you love the tuna?
That could be. That could be. But and with Brant Clark, the short answer, yes. I think he, for me, it was done before that. I think he's here to stay. But what I will say, there's two ways to look. I think maybe it was Russ. We were talking about this the other day. There's two ways to kind of look at this Brant Clark situation. Like there's the idea. Now this is before yesterday and the really nice assist that he had, or even before the Pittsburgh game for that matter. You could look at it and say, we're not really seeing that dynamic offensive player that we saw at the rookie faceoff or in preseason, making these plays and making these rushes and his great hands and all this stuff. We're not really seeing that offense, so maybe he isn't ready. And I kind of look at it this way. I look at it from the other angle. And I'm not saying that's wrong. Like, yeah, it has not been what I don't think that should be the expectation this quickly. I was looking at it the other way. What is not happening to him? I don't think he's getting hemmed in his own zone. I don't think he looks overmatched. I don't think he looks off the pace. Yes, he's made some mistakes. He's going to make plenty of them. Get used to it. There's going to be times where he joins the rush and he shouldn't. There's going to be times where he makes a bad play with the puck. Those things are going to happen. But on the whole, he hasn't looked out of place. He hasn't looked, he's answered my questions in terms of how he moves in the defensive zone. So I look at it that way, of more as to what isn't happening to him versus what is he doing, because I think that's going to come as he gets more comfortable. And we saw a preview of that against Tampa with that assist and him joining the rush. And he joined the rush quite a bit. He's starting to do that a bit more. So I think he's absolutely here to stay. I don't see any scenario that they could send this kid back.
He's not making those plays that kind of, I guess, dumbfound you. He's not making those Sean Durzi type plays. I mean, I love to defend Sean Durzi. I think Durzi doesn't deserve any of the criticism that he gets. I mean, obviously, there's been some plays this season already that are hard to defend. Yep. But, I mean, Brant Clark hasn't made any of those type of plays where you just kind of like watch. Where you just kind of watch, it's like, oh, well, there's the rookie in him. Yep. I mean, I can't think of one. I mean, I'm sure there are some. You watch a game, and but it's not as I guess macro as when you're watching the game. You're like, oh wow, that's a rookie mistake. I'm sure there's little mistakes in terms of positioning and stuff like that might lead to a goal. But besides that, yeah, Joe, like you just said, I mean, he's not making those offensive type superstar moves that we've seen all the time. But he's also not being a liability, I guess, on defense. So if that can continue, the offensive flair will come. And even he played 10 minutes last night, and he had one of the best plays of the whole night. So, I mean, just give him. I think just kind of like ease him in a little bit, like they've been doing.
And I think you're seeing some subtle of these offensive plays. The play in Tampa, the play in Pittsburgh, his patience with the puck as he went down before he made the pass to Grunstrom. And I go back to the 4-on-4 goal that Matt Roy scored against Nashville. Clark was instrumental shooting the gap, going down center lane drive. That's an offensive mind just thinking, I got to get here, open up the space. So he is doing these things that, to your point, it may not be that kind of wow factor that we saw in the preseason or rookie camp, but it's here. And the fact that he hasn't looked overmatched in the D zone just solidifies it for me.
Let's get into our sponsor here real quick before we continue the Lightning game and on with this show here at DraftKings. Let's pull it up here. Hockey fans, it's finally time to hit the ice again, and thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. You're in for a season of a lifetime. New customers can bet just $5 on any team and get $200 in free bets if they win. Do you want to bet on the World Series and then a hockey game at the same time? You can. If that wasn't enough excitement, you can turn small bets into bigger payouts with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more for your shot at a bigger payout. DraftKings is safe, secure, reliable. You can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. Bet $5 on any NHL team to win their game and get $200 in free bets if they do. That's code THPN. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions may apply. See show notes for details. Bring Russ back in here. Let's see if he's jamming like Magellan here. Let's go back to the Tampa Bay game really quick because I think this will lead into the Iafallo injury. I think the team had the most complete game. Like we've all agreed upon that. Is this a building block going forward? Because the offense has been there some games. The defense hasn't been there at all. The goaltending's been spotty. Joe, let's start with you, obviously, because Russell had to duck out for a second trying to get the mic working. Appreciate the dedication there, Russell. Is this a building block going forward? Do you think we're going to see a more solid, consistent LA Kings team, or does every dog find a bone and there's still some stuff to work out?
There's going to be some stuff that still needs to get worked out, but I do think the Kings have been a pretty consistent defensive structured team under McClellan for the last few years. I don't think it was just gone. I don't think that's gone. I think they're going to get back to it. I think they'll be able to do that. And perhaps this Tampa game is a building block toward that. So I wasn't all that worried about it being gone. Like obviously there were issues. Like we got to clean this up. This stuff's got to get cleaned up. But it was such early days that and they were on a road trip for 5 games where you're not going to get a lot of practice time. So I think now that they're back home, I think they're going to be able to get this short up. So yeah, I do think this can be a nice little building block. They skated again today, so that's obviously good news. So and we'll see what happens on Thursday against Winnipeg.
Russell, while you were going in and out, is this a building block, the Tampa Bay win, to the Kings team that we're used to seeing, the suffocating D, that type of thing? Or do you still think it may be just a one-night type of deal? There's a lot of stuff to work out. Big way to go between game 9 or game 8 and game 82.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it can be a confidence booster for the team. Like you kind of play that type of game, and then now it's in the back of your mind, like, oh, okay, we can do this again. Like this is the type of game we can play, and you especially doing it against a team like Tampa Bay. I mean, that's a team that they haven't beaten the last 10 meetings. So for them to go out there and play that similar type of game that we saw most of last year, I think that's definitely a building block that they can kind of grow and hopefully continue that going into the game tomorrow night or tonight if you're listening against Winnipeg.
I think so too, and I think it's something that goes directly into this new topic here. Iafallo on the long-term IR. Now we don't know how long that's going to be. We thought it was maybe a couple games. Now they put him on the long-term IR, maybe for cash, ramifications, what have you. But Iafallo undeniably brings defense to the third line. That line was buzzing. He solidifies being able to control when that line is effective. The Corsi was phenomenal. Now the lines get jumbled, and we'll go over line changes after this. But what are the ramifications if this lasts maybe into mid-November for Iafallo with the middle 6, so to speak?
I think it's huge. I mean, he was really the motor for that line with Byfield and Velarde. I mean, not a lot of people are kind of expecting Byfield to be that real two-way dominant player yet. So to pair him with a player like Iafallo pretty much meant a lot in terms of kind of giving him a chance to rely on Iafallo's defensive type game a little bit more. I saw Iafallo at the game. He was walking around with a crutch. So, I mean, I don't expect him to be back anytime soon. This is probably going to be a long-term thing. He had a pretty big limp going on with him. So it's unfortunate because you really were seeing the player in Iafallo that we saw to start the year last year before he kind of started playing a little I guess took a downturn in his play a little bit. I don't know if it was due to injury or what, but you were excited. I mean, this is a player the Kings are playing, paying $4 million a year to play, and he, I guess we were waiting for this opportunity for him to play middle 6 minutes. And now with Fiala in the mix, Iafallo was given the opportunity, and he was playing really well in that spot. So it sucks. It really does, because I was really excited to see what Iafallo can bring. And now that he's going to be out for a couple of years, I mean, other players are going to have to step up, and we'll see if other young players come into the lineup. It's also interesting because last game, they only had 13 forwards on the roster. And then once Arvidsson left, Anderson Dolan was the only player that could play. And now today, even they only have 12 forwards, not including Arvidsson, healthy enough to play. I mean, Arvidsson didn't even practice. So I know the Reign are in San Jose right now. I'm expecting a roster move to happen probably as early as tomorrow morning to bring in an extra forward. And I would love to see what Rasmus Kupari can do and maybe give him a spot. I know we liked, and we just talked about what Anderson Dolan brought in last game, but Kupari looked really good playing alongside Byfield and Velarde. And obviously Velarde played with Deneau and Moore in last night's game. So I would expect that to continue as long as Arvidsson's out. But if you see what Rasmus Kupari could bring, I mean, he's also a first-round pick that was taken a year after Velarde. And he's shown flash and looks pretty good toward the end of the year last year, playing a couple playoff games. So why not give him a chance and see what he can do while Iafallo's out, which probably is going to be a long term.
Yeah, I'm going to take this before I dish it off to Joe for the alley-oop here and let him slam dunk it home. I love Rasmus Kupari. I think I've been one of his biggest call boys, coming in and talking about him and piping him up and everything like that. Like when you see how fluid his skating is, when he really gets it and it clicks, it's one of those jaw-dropping moments watching hockey, right? And when he drives, like not a lot of people realize how big he is on the ice. Like, I mean, I'm not talking like 6'5" or whatever, but he's a strong human being. And when he gets those moments, just like Kempe gets those moments where he's like, oh my God. And then Kupari's even bigger than Kempe. At least it seems so when he carries the puck. Man, like that, the sky's the limit for that kid. And like, he just needs to get solid minutes to get that competition. And, as much as I love Jared Anderson Dolan for being a Swiss Army knife, like Kupari could be a difference maker going forward in this team. And that could be something that I'm looking forward to for him, because I'm been tooting the horn. I think he's fantastic. Obviously, we talked about early in this podcast, getting the goal and everything like that with, real early in that game. I think that's a person that would look good. And if you're looking at that line with Byfield drives play, Kupari drives play, that could be a line that just gets pucks to the net and lets chaos happen and has strong possession numbers. They're good skaters. Joe, my question to you then is, do you let Jared Anderson Dolan, because of the fact that he's made the roster, see what he can do, give him a couple games, get that cup of coffee as a Swiss Army knife? Or do you try to plug a player in like Kupari or insert your own player here in and try to find lightning because Iafallo is out for the foreseeable future?
I like the Kupari shout. Just quick touch on Iafallo. I echo what Russ said. It sucks. I think the team's better with him in the lineup down there on that third line. It sucks. He was playing well, so hopefully he's able to get back healthy as soon as possible. But I think Anderson Dolan is a great guy to have as a 13th forward. I'm sure he wants to be much more than that. I think he can be much more than that. That said, I'm with you on Kupari. I think he brings an element to that line of skill and skating element to that line and playmaking ability to that line that is needed, that I think could be crucial. What I would say too is in the loss of Iafallo, and something I've been watching a lot with Byfield, and I think I told you guys I'm watching every single one of Byfield's shifts. I'm tracking his touches, and I'm doing the same with Anze Kopitar. And the reason I'm doing that is so I can see, okay, here's what Byfield's doing as a young center on the third line. What is the number one center doing? And do those touches look a lot different? When you watch Anze Kopitar, he is a key piece to the Kings breakout. He is always swinging, whether it's on a regroup or when they're looking to break out. He is the breakout goes through Kopitar, and he touches the puck a lot more in the middle of the ice. Right now, Byfield's not doing that. And I think what we'd like to see, and we'll see what happens here over the next few games, is does he become more involved on the breakout and become that player that's swinging there through the middle, being that option for the defenseman, being that option for the winger to be, I'm the guy on the breakout. Give me the puck on the breakout. I want it, and I want to skate through the neutral zone and get in, a la Anze Kopitar. So that's what I'm looking for at a Byfield, to try to see, like, how does the Iafallo thing affect this? Because you mentioned how good he is defensively. If we can see, and I'm not saying Byfield's been bad defensively. I think he has been pretty good. I want to see him more involved on breakouts, on regroups. I want him being the guy that's getting the puck through the middle of the ice. And I think that, in combination with the wheels that Kupari brings and the skill that Kupari brings, I think the line has the potential to be pretty dynamic.
I want to go in here, Russ, with this next question to you. Obviously, you can't replace the defensive acumen 1-for-1 with any prospect that we have with Iafallo. So how can the line change their dynamic and still be as effective?
I think it's all in the onus, really, of Byfield being kind of establishing that second overall potential that we've kind of are hoping to see. I mean, it's been an up and down starts of the year for Byfield, I feel like. I mean, we're all kind of, even in last night's game, there was a play where I believe it was a 2-on-1, and then he just ended up fumbling the puck, like, as soon as he entered the zone. And I feel like we see that more and more from him. I don't know. You're kind of just waiting for Byfield to kind of wow us a little bit. There's been flashes here and there. He had that really good shift in Minnesota that looked really strong toward the end of the game. And then I believe he had another shift like that in Nashville. But it's a little bit inconsistency from him to start the year. And I don't know. I guess we have to put a little bit more on Byfield to kind of take that next step. Maybe we're coddling him a little too much and not being too hard on him. I mean, he's also still a really young player. He didn't even play a full season last year. So that's why I was just so disappointed to see, or so upset to see Iafallo go down, because that line had some momentum, and you were like, okay, like, Byfield and Iafallo and Velarde are clicking. This is good. This is really good for Byfield's development to kind of gain that confidence. And now he's got two new wingers playing alongside of him, so it's a whole new adjustment that he has to make. So
was that line clicking because of the wingers and not because of Byfield? Because it seems like you're stating that case.
Yeah, I think so. I think Iafallo was. I mean, I don't want to say Byfield wasn't doing anything, but I think Iafallo was definitely helping. And look at what Velarde's been doing. I mean, Velarde's been playing out of his mind to start the year. So to have those two players, I mean, players that bring a specific skill set. I mean, with Velarde's skill in the offensive zone and Iafallo's high-end defensive capabilities, that really helps Byfield kind of get his feet wet a little bit in all areas of the ice. So that's why I was so upset to see Iafallo go down, because now it just kind of tinkers with Byfield's development a little bit toward the start of the season. So hopefully they're back home, they get some more practices in. Byfield can kind of get used and kind of grow some chemistry with the players he's going to play. And we'll talk about the lines that are going to happen, but I guess here soon. But you're just kind of waiting and see Byfield take that next step. And it hasn't really happened in the first 8 games, but it's still early. I'm sure he'll show some flash here soon.
Real McCoy comes in. Excuse me. Do you guys have a minute to talk about our Lord and Savior, Gabriel Velarde? Yes, we will be talking about our Lord and Savior. Get your autobiographies ready and your prayer beads, because we will be talking about him in the line changes. I think it's an acumen here, and I got talking with a fellow royalty with Pavel on Twitter about Byfield, and we'll talk about that in the line changes. But I think the fact that there's got to be times where he's taking that line forward, right? And I feel like his wingers are doing that for him so far in the season. And you can say he's young all he wants, but there's other players on the team that are doing that. Clark is young, and he's doing that with his D pair. You have a lot of other players in the league that are doing that. Robinson is young, and he just got an $8 million contract, right? So, like, it's, for me, like, I understand patience, and I also understand responsibility. And as a number 2 overall pick, you want him to have that responsibility. He's on the third line. He's not paying tough minutes. He's not playing tough opponents. I just want to see him carry a line for one game and drag that line forward. And I haven't seen it so far. It's 8 games in, so I'm not worried yet. But you want to see that from that type of player.
Yeah, just an example of what that could look like is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where there was a play against Tampa in the second period where they were on it was a deep regroup. It was kind of back deep at the bottom of the circles, and he kind of swung, but he swung along the boards and he stayed wide along the boards. The middle of the ice was wide open in the top of the defensive zone. Like, I want him swinging in again. This is exactly what Kopitar would do. He'd swing right into the middle and say, "Give me the puck. I'll figure it out from here." I want Byfield to be doing that. Get yourself into a passing option, demand the puck, be more assertive, and get more engaged in terms of the breakout. I think if he does that, then you're going to start to see him, because when he does get the puck with speed, he's very tough to slow down. We've seen him do that before in the past. So I think it's the onus is, I think it's more on him to do that. I don't think it's a system thing, because we see Kopitar do it all the time. So I think he's just got to be able to get a little bit more comfortable in his skin and take a bit more ownership and say, "Get me the puck in the middle of the ice. I want it with speed and stride."
Do you feel like he almost plays a little bit too fast for him? I mean, I think he needs to slow down. I mean, we've always talked about how his speed and with how big he is. It always feels like he's always losing the puck because he's going too fast, and he just needs to slow the game down. It's hard to say, because we always talk about the NHL pace and how much faster the game is, but for a player that big, you kind of want to see him use his size a little bit more and use his playmaking ability a little bit more and slow the game down a little bit. And I don't know. It's just, I feel like that you see him constantly taking the puck up through the neutral zone at high speed when he just has so much ice, and he kind of just evaluate the play a little bit more.
I think that's between the ears. Personally, I think that he needs to be a more kind of read player, if that makes any sense. Almost like a quarterback who's making his reads. Be that guy that, as you have and again, I keep going back to Kopitar, but like, the idea is Quinton Byfield eventually becomes the Anze Kopitar, right? The number one center. And you watch him, how he slows the game. He's so good at it. Is as good as we've seen, really in the NHL for years now. He's been one of the best two-way centers in the game, because he doesn't panic. There's no jittery with him. He's very fluid, but he's just the way he sees the ice. And I think Byfield right now is much more act first, think second. And it's tough, right? That is going to, because he's trying to make an impact.
Well, isn't that hockey? Isn't that hockey? I mean, you don't have much time to think when you're on the ice, right? Everything's happening.
So we talk about guys with hockey IQ, right? And what that is being able to kind of read the play when you don't have the puck. Watch the guys when they don't have the puck, and then when they get it, they know where they're going with it.
So it's like the Matrix when the bullet slows down. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, sure. Because like when Kopitar gets the puck, it's as if everything kind of slows down for him, and he's able to kind of pick and choose what he wants to do with it. And I think with Byfield, that's where he's got to get to. Again, that's a tall task in the early days here, but like, that's the idea of, before he gets that puck, he has an idea where he's going with it. This way, he's not rushing, he's not jittery, he's not panicking with the puck, and he's not forcing something that may not be there. But that comes with time for most guys, right? Not every guy can jump into the league and just have that. That's going to take them. That's why I made the suggestion that I think we're going to see this in the early going. And I had said, let me see holiday time, Thanksgiving, Christmas. I think we're going to see a different Quinton Byfield, because he's going to have 20, 25 games under his belt. Let's see how he looks after that. And then I want to make a better judgment at that point. Say, are we starting to see this? Are we starting to see signs of this?
Well, and that's the thing. If that's what our knock is on Byfield right now, I mean, you can't teach speed and size. That's already there with him. So
physically, he's there.
Yeah, exactly. So if he can, he'll learn that kind of pace and when to turn it up to 11, and then when to slow the game down a little bit and read the play a little bit more. So that'll come, and hopefully with 20, 25 games under his belt this season, we'll see a different Quinton Byfield.
Yeah, I was going to get a little brief touch, maybe a little brief rant on here. Tage Thompson didn't blow up until he was 24. Now tearing it up. QB is the same size. Every player isn't a linear development, but there's some resemblance. I think for me, there's a lot of preaching of patience for most people. And for me, there's got to be some criticism. And I think that QB needs to be farther along in his development. Now, you could say ankle, you could say whatever you want to say, but expectations for a number 2 overall pick, right? I mean, if you throw it to other franchises, I mean, you got to assume that New York Rangers aren't happy with Lafreniere so far. Like, you got to assume that he would be farther along. But then the Kraken are got to be happy with Beniers, second overall pick, drafted a year later than Byfield. He's looked way farther along than Byfield has so far. So
he's also a collegiate player, but I understand.
Development isn't linear, but expectations are firm. And when you're drafted in a top 5 role and you're expected to play 800 plus games and all this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, I would personally like to see Byfield in the Matty Beniers mold so far in his career rather than what he showed. And it doesn't mean that he can't get there. Doesn't mean he can't surpass that mold. But there's just some things that expectations have to be met. And he hasn't for me so far. And I'm still preaching patience because he is a unicorn, right? 6'4" or whatever. And I don't want to get into this little graphic that I saw earlier today, but just I'll snidbit it. The fact that there's the same projection for people under 5'9" that there is people over 6'4" in the NHL is that it's hard for them to pan out. And so, yeah, Byfield's a unicorn. He's 6'5", he's 2 this and that, but he might be too big for hockey. He might be too big for his role. He might be this and all that. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, he has all the intangibles. I don't know how it's going to turn out. Let's throw it to the new topic here, and because we're going to have lots to talk about. We're already 46 minutes in here. Line changes. And I got into it a little bit on Twitter today. Should we break up the first line? Should we put this player with that player? All this kind of stuff. Obviously, 8 games in, Kings haven't met expectations for a lot of what fans are talking about this season with the record. You know, we're supposed to be, winning division championships and all this kind of stuff with Kevin Fiala. So I want to start there. Let's start there for me because I already brought it up. Breaking up the first line. The line was minus 13 going into last game. They scored 2 goals. They let 2 goals in, or they were on ice for 2 goals. I guess that's probably the same thing. But still, minus 13 on the season. Is it time to break up that line? See if there's some way to get some defensive acumen. Is it too early? Have you liked what you've seen? And if so, if you think it's time to break it up, what's the first line look like to you? And I'll start with Joe.
No, I don't break it up right now. I think it's too soon. There's flashes when they look dynamite. It isn't consistent enough. I acknowledge that it hasn't been. They haven't hit the ground running. I wouldn't say that necessarily, but I see the potential there with this line. I really do. I think the way Kopitar slows the game down, the way he can see the ice, his playmaking ability, how good he is on the breakout, the way Kempe can shoot it and fly up and down the ice, and then you mix in kind of that player that can almost play that rover type style with Kevin Fiala. He's got good hands, playmaking ability, and can shoot it himself. Like I see a good mix there. I get the kind of frustration, I guess, but keep in mind, Kevin Fiala just got here. I mean, I think we take for granted that these guys are just going to step in and just all of a sudden they just mesh and gel, and it's going to take some time. And will this line work? I still think I'm optimistic, but if it doesn't, it doesn't. And then you make the move. But I guess my question would be to those that would break it up, what are you doing to do so? And does that mess up things, other lines that are going well, perhaps? Because that Danault line, it doesn't even matter who's with Danault right now. Danault, Moore, and Arvidsson were starting to play better. Velarde, that was one of the best games I've ever seen. The best game I've ever seen out of him. And we've talked about the Byfield line, how it started off okay. Now he's got 2 brand new wingers. He might get another one if they bring up somebody. So that's kind of a mishmash. Like, so what is it that we're doing, and are we creating more of a problem? And I think rather than giving them time to gel, I don't know. I don't touch it right now, though. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, how often did we talk about when the Kings brought in Fiala that this is a player that Kopitar hasn't played with probably his whole career? So it's an adjustment period. I mean, we're still only 8 games into the season, and I just mentioned Kopitar. Like, think about a player like Kempe. He's never probably played with a player with the high end skill like Kevin Fiala has. So, I mean, obviously Kopitar and Kempe have some really good chemistry. Kempe put up 35 goals last year, and he's on a good pace this year. He's got 5 goals in the first 8 games. So once Kevin Fiala gets that chemistry built with those 2 players, I feel like that's a line that's really going to gel. And the second line of Danault and Moore is kind of giving them an opportunity to develop a little bit, I guess, longer than we maybe anticipated. But yeah, it's hard for NHL players, especially for high-end skilled NHL players, to just jump in and all of a sudden be able to adapt to the players that they're playing with. So I think if you give it time, they'll be fine. They'll be fine.
And I'm going to throw this out there. This is total speculation. I don't know this, but Andrei Kopitar has been in this league a long time. He's wearing the C. He's got great respect in that coach's room. Think if it was that bad, and he's like, T-Mac, this ain't going to work. It ain't a fit. We'd see a change by now. You know, and that's just, again, that's me speculating, not to say Kopitar is like going to run to the coach and say the line's not working, but keep in mind, they talk. Like, I guarantee you McClellan has had conversations just kind of offhand, off to the side with Kopitar. You know, how's it going, right?
What are you seeing?
What are you seeing? Guarantee it. Of course, I'd be shocked if they didn't. You know, all sorts of conversations go on in the room, on the ice at practice, in the hallway, like when they're doing video. Like there's conversations that happen, and I think if it was that big of an issue, that perhaps we would have seen a change by now. But I don't know. I guess I get the frustration, but I'm not there yet. I think. Yeah.
We've waited years for this player to play with Kopitar, and then we're just going to break him up after 8 games. No, you got to keep him at 40 games. I mean, this is a player you're paying him close to $8 million a year. You have to create that chemistry with Kopitar because you're paying him that much money to be a top line winger. So I think it has to happen. You can't place him. I mean, what are you going to do? Place him with Danault? I mean, with Moore? I mean, yeah, maybe that could work, but you're paying him the money to be a top line winger. I think that's where you have to stick him for now until the wheels fall off, I guess.
So, I mean, but fans have been talking about it. We already have 2 fans in here. I mean, CJ coming in for Fiala. Oof, not what I was expecting. Not sure coming in for Fiala with Byfield, ? So, like, fans are getting upset. I mean, you're paying – this is the highest paid player since Doughty and Kopitar. So, they're upset. I mean, they're not expecting a negative 13. They're expecting Fiala to be lighting the roof off this place. To be honest, they're expecting Fiala to play like Velarde at this point, right? So, like, the point – production based on what you're paying them, that's what they're expecting, and they want immediate returns and all this kind of stuff. So it's
a 2-point difference.
I know, but you're talking about this, and I had this, and my thing was this with Byfield. This question right here, Fiala with Byfield. Okay, if you're going to put Fiala on the third line with Byfield, I've already talked about how his wingers are elevating him. Now you're forcing Byfield to play minutes above what he's ready to play. Is Byfield ready to go one-on-one with McDavid night in and night out? No, he's not. So you're forcing him because you're paying Fiala $8 million a year to be a top-line player, which means he has to drag Byfield up to play the same amount of minutes that he's expected to play. And he's just not ready for that.
The hypothetical move here would be similar to what they did with Arvidsson last year, and they put him down with Danault, and it's Danault and Moore. Now what happens with Arvidsson? We already saw that maybe not a fit with Kopitar. So, but the way Velarde's playing, maybe he's the one that moves up with Kopitar and Kempe, and then Arvidsson's down with Byfield.
There we go.
And Kaliev. Now, again, I'm not necessarily saying I would do that. I'm much more willing to keep that first line and give them a few more games here to get going. Because, again, the other thing to keep in mind, they were on a 5-game road trip, not a lot of practice time. So I'm willing to give this, more time to get them to gel. But the hypothetical move is not Fiala with Byfield, in my opinion. It's Fiala with Danault and Arvidsson down with Byfield. That's just my, that's where I would do. But by that time, to make that move, Lord knows what'll happen if somebody else gets hurt or who knows. So it's all hypothetical right now. But to answer the initial question is, I'm going to be patient.
Well, what will also help is that now that the team's back home, you have opportunity to match up whoever you want to match up that line.
Good point,
with. So, yeah, I mean, we talk about the bad games that first line had. The whole team looked bad. I mean, it wasn't just that line specifically that was dragging the team down. Defensively, they looked bad. Goaltending, they looked bad. And I guess besides the Moore line or the Danault line that had a couple good games there, the team didn't look good as a whole. So,
and even on our last pod, the Danault line was the worst line. We were talking about how they
were getting run off the ice. I mean, they were the worst line. So, I mean, yeah, it's been it's been 8 games. Just
8
give
games,
them a
guys.
chance. Give them a chance to develop. This is a player that they're paying him $8 million to play top line minutes. For them to, I mean, forcing this chemistry with Kopitar and Kempe to work, and would be the best thing for the team to happen. Because if it does ever come to fruition where those three are gelling, I mean, man, that's just gonna open up a whole new world for the Kings offensively.
Brandon, you get on me sometimes for being a little bit too optimistic, but like I'm a little like he's come into a brand new situation in LA, right? And he hits the ground with 5 points in 7 games. Like I don't think it's that bad. Like it's not as if he's got a goose egg on the board. I don't know. I'm
No, I was defending that online and saying that like you got to hold them together. I think a lot of fans are. I mean, everything now with modern society is instant gratification,
instant.
And they want him. I mean, no Kings are in the top 10 in points, right? So I understand that they're not going to be lighting it up, but are you not
When was the
happy?
last time that
Are
happened?
you not entertained with Gabriel Velarde? Are you not entertained with what the offense is doing? Like, if we just single out the offense and we're averaging 4 points a game almost right now, it seems like, so, or 4 goals a game, like the offense seems to be doing something great. Like, and this is my realism moment with this line, and I'll throw it to you guys, whoever wants to answer after this, is Kopitar's aging, and I've said this all off season, is that there's going to be a flip in this team, and my fear is that there's going to be no natural progression to the 1C. Kopitar is going to fall off. Deneau's not a 1C, and Byfield isn't ready. Kempe can't play defense. Fiala's not a defensive guy either. If Kopitar can't hold that line up above water defensively, they can't match up against any top line in the league on a continuing basis. They're going to score points, but they're going to allow goals, which is what we've seen so far. That's my only fear going forward. Is that fear asinine? Is that fear constructive? Like, how do you guys feel about that? Because I think that's my biggest fear with this. I look at -13, and you look at last game alone, that line had 6 points, and they were a net 0 on the plus minus, right? So is that wrong of me to feel that way? Am I not seeing the ice correctly because of too many beers? Like, what's going on?
I don't think so.
I don't think that's an unfair thing. Like, not to go back and rehash this, but that's exactly why I wanted Jack Eichel on this team, because it just sped up the process. You didn't have to wait to see if Byfield would be ready to take over. You have the heir apparent in Jack Eichel, but that's obviously done and dusted. So I think it's a fair question, because you're exactly right. If Byfield isn't ready in a year to 2 years to be what the Kings hope he's going to be, now you're in a little bit of a predicament to where this team is still not ready to run at the cup. That's a fair question. I don't think that's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, if they were, I guess, a little bit further ahead in the rebuild when they won the lottery, pretty much. I mean, I don't remember. I think the Kings were like 10th in a lottery odds or something at the time when they got this second overall pick for Byfield. I mean, they were still a really bad team at that time. So they had the time to. That's why they drafted Byfield. They had this time to kind of wait and see this unicorn, like you mentioned, develop into a top 6 NHL top line player, superstar in the league. That's why they didn't draft a player like Stützle, who was more than ready to play in the NHL, has already earned himself an 8-year contract. And so it's weird because we're still it's all correlates to how Byfield develops. I mean, Anze Kopitar is still going to be the first line center for the Kings until Byfield pushes him out of the way. Deneau's not going to be that first line center. He's more of a two-way kind of defending. He's still a top 6 center, but he's never going to play first line minutes for a team, a Stanley Cup contender, nonetheless. So it's all correlates to see how Byfield develops. Until Byfield pushes Kopitar down in terms of minutes, we're still going to see Anze playing 20 plus minutes a night. That's just how it is. Because you can't play. I mean, who else we just talked about? Who else are you going to match up against those players like McDavid and Jack Eichel and everybody else? You can't have Deneau out there 25 minutes. You're going to have Kopitar matching up against them because, I mean, yeah, there's been a little bit of flaws in Kopitar's game, sure, to start. I mean, even just in last night's game, I believe it was just at the end of the first period, he got beat easily to the slot. I forget who was defending, but it was almost kind of a lazy play where he was just kind of stick checking and got beaten to his own net. So until Byfield can push him out of the way, we're going to see Kopitar playing those first line minutes, which is, I don't think it's a bad thing. Kopitar still shows flashes. He's a veteran presence, and he's been there before. So it's just, you just have to ride the wave for the time being.
I think there's a way, though, and we've talked about this, and this is now comes to McClellan, is because we're talking about here, you need Kopitar to be able to handle those top minutes against the top centers at 5-on-5, and I think there should be an effort here to try to limit his penalty kill time. I really think that should be the case, and I'll say I think that's probably happening. He's third in terms of forwards, in terms of PK minutes so far this year, behind Deneau and Moore, but like, let Lazat can play more. That's another spot where the Iafallo injury really hurts, because he was a good penalty killer. But I'd like to see, there's no reason Lazat can't play more, and perhaps that's another way to get Byfield a little bit more acclimated too. See what they can. And I know he's been sprinkled into the penalty kill here recently, and I think that's a good look. And I think this is a way to help keep Kopitar a little bit fresher, because you need him at 5-on-5 to be an impact centerman. That's crucial, and you need him on the power play to be an impact man on the power play, and you hope that you can find somebody else that can at least shoulder some of the burden on the penalty kill.
Trapper9 coming here. Sorry I'm late. Would you mind starting again? Well, this is hockeyroyalty.com, the official podcast of Too Bad Man. Just go ahead and rewind and get going there. I think I want to keep it going here with the line changes, and Velarde, our Lord and Savior, as a fan called it earlier. I mean, you could plug him anywhere right now. He seems to be dominating. Mm-hmm. And so Arvidsson might be out a little bit. Iafallo, obviously long-term IR. We already talked about the ramifications there. Is he firm on the second line for you guys? Does he deserve a shot? Obviously, you already said that you would give the first line more time to gel, so maybe we're not going that high yet, but is he Deneau's new partner for the foreseeable future? Do you ride the wave that Velarde's on because you want to see the max potential, or does Arvidsson get that spot when he comes back? How do you guys feel about it?
I am all behind the new DMV line that's been titled on Twitter. Yeah, I mean, Deneau, Moore, and Velarde.
Are people getting too lazy with these line names?
Yes.
Like, let's just take the initials.
It's just his last name, initials. It was. I mean, the nice line was pretty good. It's the numbers. You add the numbers together. Yeah. A little math involved, but I don't know. I think the DMV line also works. I mean, California DMV. I mean, is what it is. But I don't know. Velarde. I mean, there's, like McClellan just mentioned last night. There's not much more you can say about him. He's just been outstanding. I guess it's just we have to expect this type of player now, and to have that skill set that he brings to the ice. I mean, that shift that he had playing with Deneau and Moore. I mean, that's a shift that we haven't seen in quite some time. I mean, he was toe dragging. He was putting the pucks to his legs, shots in the slot, and that was against the Stamkos and them. I mean, so I think you just have to ride the wave with him and Deneau. I mean, Deneau and Moore, we've kind of grown accustomed to that pairing being just solid. And I mean, whoever plays with them. I mean, at the start of the year last year, Iafallo was on that line, and they looked good. So now that Deneau and Moore have grown and have this chemistry together, I think if you slot Velarde there and the way he's been playing, I think that's something you have to stick with for the time being. And I only say that because also the third line with Velarde and Byfield and Kaliev, it hasn't really worked so far to start the year. And I think what's wrong with that line too is there's not a lot of pace there. So once Arvidsson comes back, which I don't think Arvidsson will be out too long, he's kind of just dealing with an illness, doesn't seem anything injury related. So I think once Arvidsson comes back, I think he'll help to bring a little bit more pace to that line, to help Byfield out a little bit, help Kaliev out a little bit. And Arvidsson's also a really good playmaker. He's not just a scorer. Mm-hmm. We've seen him set up countless goals with Deneau and Moore last year.
You sure about that? He just seems to shoot when he crosses the blue line every single time.
That does happen quite a bit. But he brings a lot of bit of a passing acumen to his game too. So I think to have a player like Arvidsson playing alongside Byfield and Kaliev, I think that helps open up a spot with Velarde playing alongside Danault and Mora. I think that really helps.
Completely agree. That's exactly what I would do as well. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't say, like, McClellan talked about it today after the skate. Like, they talked specifically about the first line, about how they're looking better and they're getting there. So they're not getting split up anytime soon. So, and I don't think they should.
Yeah, I think you're looking at it in a way that you want to ride a wave of a player, right? You're capping. If you keep capping his minutes, even though he's proven himself, you're limiting maybe his potential, because you draft him to be a top 3 in your team, right? At that point in the franchise, Velarde was drafted to be the next heir apparent to Kopitar, or be a top 3 winger at that point, and yada yada yada. Fast forward, crystal ball. Here we are now, and he's showing those signs, showing that skill set. No offense to Arvidsson, but he's not our future. Velarde is our future, and if that line is clicking, then so be it. Now, hear me out. I know Danault and Moore have this thing going on, and I don't want to interrupt that, because you don't interrupt a good line. But could you see the line being a little bit more offensively skilled, if you put Velarde and Arvidsson on that line at the same time, and move Moore, who is a defensive acumen player, like we saw with Byfield and Iafallo, down to the third line? I mean, I know that's a lot of mixing and shaking up the Bulls, but I think that might push the pace of the third line as well as give them a little bit more defensive acumen, and have Velarde and Arvidsson on the second line. What do you guys think?
It's interesting. It's something I probably wouldn't do, but yeah, I kind of see what you're getting at here. Because, I mean, it's hard, because you want to see that. I guess you just want to see that for a game, because, I mean, Trevor Moore. We never thought Trevor Moore would be a top 6 player. So you almost wonder, how much is it Philip Danault kind of helping Moore out a little bit? But I mean, those two, you just. The pace that they bring to the ice, and the offensive production that they've been able to bring to the ice. I mean, look at what Moore did when he was paired with Danault toward the end of the year last season. I think he was leading the team in points from like January on. That's something,
like 40
you
points
can't,
or something.
yeah, that's something you can't break up. So as I get it, in terms of, you want to see more kind of, it's almost like you're almost helping Byfield out a little bit, as opposed to just kind of helping Danault out more. Pairing more with Byfield. So I don't know. I think it's something you can't break up, but I understand the point.
I want to counteract that a little bit to you, Russ. Doesn't it sound similar to what we talked about with Iafallo? Like, he's playing on Kopitar's line because he's the best option there. They seem to gel because they're effective. But once we get a real winger in that spot, that line will soar. Does that seem kind of like what the second line is? Like, more as a placeholder, like he's effective, but we really need a person that can be a top scorer for us to compete with the Colorados and those teams of the NHL?
I mean, a little bit, but that line hasn't been bad. That's the thing, is they've been really good. I mean, Byfield, we're kind of still waiting for him, and we're trying to find wingers to play alongside of him now that Iafallo is out. So that's why I say, pair him with a player like Arvidsson and have Velarde play up there. Because, I mean, Arvidsson's a 30 goal scorer in the NHL. He brings some offense to the game, and maybe he can help Byfield out more than a player like Velarde out, because those two never really seem to get the chemistry developed. So I think if you pair Arvidsson there, leave more with Danault. They've been solid all going back to January of last year. I think that's a real good top 9 to have if you're playing a 30 goal scorer in the bottom 6. That's something the Kings haven't had haven't been able to do in quite some time. So I think that's what you have to do going forward.
Joe, we talk about pairs a lot in the NHL, and we talked about a lot of last season on the Making It Rain, finding pairs and finding that third. Danault and Moore seem to be that pair. So is it hey, let's not fix it if it's not broken type situation for you?
Yeah, I'm with Russ here. I think that that if when Arvidsson comes back, assuming Velarde keeps playing at this level, I got no problem with keeping Velarde there and seeing if something clicks with Arvidsson, and perhaps Arvidsson unlocks something on the Byfield line. I'm in on that, sure. Because I think we don't have that pair yet. with Byfield. We talk about the pairs. Now, I don't know if we found that yet. Like it's by default right now. I guess it's Kaliev.
I think
but
we're trying to force Kaliev to develop, and it makes sense because I mean I've long been saying I want Kaliev and Byfield to develop some chemistry because they're the offensive future for the Kings. So if you can leave them two together and have Arvidsson, and you're just trying to find another third to go alongside them with them while Iafallo is out, because I think once Iafallo comes back, you just slot him right back with Byfield and pair him. And I think Byfield and Kaliev would be really interesting to watch because we haven't seen that this season yet. So, but then it's like, what do you do with Arvidsson at that point? So there's some interesting things that will happen once Iafallo comes back. But for the time being, I think once Arvidsson is healthy and back from his illness, I think you slot him with Byfield and kind of ride that wave until that Velarde wave that we've been seeing with Deneau and Moore.
I don't know what coaches think about this from a philosophy standpoint, but this just flooded into my mind because we talked about it last episode. Russ, you mentioned if Turcotte was healthy, he would seem like the perfect plug and play to that line. Turcotte definitely has chemistry with Kaliev going back to the World Juniors and the Reign. Can the pair be two wingers and you try to slot a center in? Like, it doesn't seem that way. Every time you talk about a pair, it's always the center with a winger, and then you find that other third. It doesn't seem like that fits, Joe, right? Like, you can't really get two wingers and you just plug in whatever center because they're the linchpin to each line. It's interesting. I wonder who Byfield's going to eventually click with to get that third line cooking.
Yeah, because the center is kind of the idea of being he's the one that kind of makes the whole thing go. So how do we mold and fit guys around that centerman? And I think that's the puzzle you try to put together.
So let's get with the fourth line here, and we talked about Jared Anderson-Dolan getting some playing time, and I think that there needs to be constant rotation. I mean, does Kaliev stay on that fourth line because they've been good with Lemieux and Lizotte? Is that where then the rotation needs to be? We're talking about line changes up and down, right? I mean, so that has to be obviously affecting the fourth line in that way. Do you guys feel it's fine the way it is? Do you feel like Kupari should get brought up? Do you feel Jad should get a shot at that line? How do you guys feel about the whole thing?
I continue to be, and guys tell me I'm wrong, and I probably am. I just continue to be underwhelmed, I think, by Lemieux hit the. I don't know.
Is it beer goggles? Because like he scored a lot of goals last season. He was in a lot of key fights where you get that emotion pumping. Is it beer goggles or is it?
I don't know. I just the stuff like the Kings are a team that I don't think can afford to be in the penalty box, and I think that what he does at times is a bit over the top. Like between the whistles, I think he's fine. It's the stuff afterwards where all of a sudden he takes a stupid penalty after the whistle that's totally unnecessary because he's trying to rile everybody up. Well, now we're shorthanded. And I know he draws penalties as well. In fact, he does draw more than he takes. So perhaps it's a net positive. So maybe I just talked myself into it. But I don't know. I just continue to feel like there's a better option. But he has played well, so I don't know where I'm going with that. I guess
does the line look better to you with Jad and Kupari?
It sounds better.
What about you, Russ? Does that line look better with Jad and Kupari, or are you on the boat with Lemieux? His positives outweigh the negative.
It's so funny because I guess I'm just kind of going to give away my player of the week. My player of the week's is Brandon Lemieux. He has been he's been so good the last couple of games. I don't know what it is. He's obviously playing a small amount of minutes. I think he's averaging like 9-10 minutes a game. But every time he's on the ice, he and Lizotte are just making things happen. And I understand, like I totally get it. Like the whole unnecessary like penalties and like after the whistle stuff. Like if he got rid of all that, I mean, he'd be such a good player. I mean, I'm just gonna say he's my player of the week. And you know who's leading the team in Corsi right now at 5-on-5? It's Brendan Lemieux. You know who's leading the team in expected goals at 5-on-5? It's Brendan Lemieux. This player, he's playing limited minutes on the fourth line, but he and Lizotte are making things happen and driving play. They're probably one of the best pairings in forwards that the Kings have right now. It's weird, but like I understand it because I want Rasmus Kupari to be in the lineup. I want Jared Anderson-Dolan to be in the lineup. But the thing is, Lemieux and Lazat are playing well enough that you can't take them out of the lineup. And it's unfortunate because you have young players that you want to see get time right now. But the thing is, Lemieux brings something that no one else on the team can bring in terms of that aggressiveness and the tenacity and that exciting, that after the whistle stuff, I mean, you want to get rid of it, but it's also exciting and fans love to see it. So I don't know. I'm really happy with the way that line is playing. And I kind of, as much as I hate it, I want to see Kaliev back there because those three looked really good together last year. I mean, that was a line that was leading the team in shot attempts per game. I mean, they were looking really good, and it's just they've been surprising to me. I mean, I talk I'm sure I'm not the only one who was criticizing Lazat in his early career, but he's been a solid fourth line center for the Kings, and pairing him with Lemieux has kind of elevated his game a little bit. So I love what I'm seeing out of that line to start the year.
I want to bring this up really quick, just as a snippet, is that we haven't mentioned one name, and I think he's been my most disappointing player this season, and it's Carl Grundstrom. And where does he fit into this equation? Because we thought his spot in the lineup would have been Velarde's, and Velarde's taken that spot and ran with it. So where does he fit in at this point? Because we thought he had a spot out of the playoff situation. Hasn't really had a good start to the season. Hasn't gelled with a center so far. He does have all the talent in the world to be that grinder with some offensive ability that can hit, that type of thing. Almost like you talked about, a Dustin Brown light. So where does he fit into this equation? Is he the odd man out? Is he going to get a chance because of injury and we still remain hopeful? Like, just a quick snippet from both of you guys, because we got to move on to the rain and everything.
Even after playoffs, I thought best case scenario, or I thought he was a perfect 13th forward because of the skill set he brought. That said, as the camp went along, preseason went along, like, man, he's earning a spot to crack the top four lines. And right now it hasn't exactly gone great. So he's a guy that's in that 12, 13, 14 rotation right now and trying to figure out what fits.
I mean, I'm happy having Carl Grundstrom on the roster because he looks like a better playoff player than a regular season player. I mean, in the playoffs, he was outstanding. I thought he was finishing checks and causing a lot of, I guess, disruption in the offensive zone. I thought he looked great. But in the regular season, it's kind of just like ho-hum, I guess, a little bit for him. And you're kind of waiting to see kind of him be a little bit more consistent, because I've heard the Dustin Brown comparisons in terms of his hitting ability, because it's there. I mean, he's a powerful hitter. He rattles the boards every time he puts a player up against it. So I don't know. I kind of agree with you, Brandon. You want to expect a little bit more after what we saw in the playoffs, but maybe it kind of, I guess, fogged our vision a little bit from what we saw, and kind of realized that maybe he is just like a 12th, 13th forward on a good NHL team. Because, I mean, if it were me, I'd rather have Rasmus Kupari in the lineup than Carl Grundstrom. That's just it. Kupari. I mean, Grundstrom is a second-round pick, but Kupari was a first-round pick for a reason. He brings a lot more speed. Like you said, he's got some sneaky size to him as well. So I'd like to see Kupari in the lineup over him.
Russell already foreshadowed his pick, but we're time to get into the BetStamp Player of the Week. BetStamp is a betting app that allows you to get multiple betting sites in one app. Hey, do you want to bet on this game? What are the best odds? Get it going with BetStamp there. Hey, MGM's giving you better odds? Place it there. Hey, DraftKings is giving you odds? Place it there. Hey, do you want to know your stats? Hey, they keep track of your stats. Hey, am I better in over-unders? Am I better with, hey, let's pick this team over that team? Am I better with baseball? Am I better with golf? Nobody's better with golf. Bet hockey. So get BetStamp right now, because they control everything. You want to follow another bettor and see what they're doing in and out? You can follow them and see what their betting stats is. Pay for bets. Do this kind of thing. You know what they also do? They give you free money to log in with new sites. Hey, I don't have a MGM login. Let's do that. Let's go there, get some free money going there. BetStamp is the place to be there. What you can do with BetStamp versus other things is really find the best odds. Make your money go further in this. Is it free to use? Yes. It's free to use. BetStamp's got you covered there. Right, Joe? Joe's been using it for a long time. He's really taking his betting to the next level. You can use our code Hockey Royalty, all uppercase, with BetStamp if you're in a betting state. Also in Canada, for all you hockey heads out there, LA Kings fans, BetStamp is the place to be. Joe, you're a big bettor here. Obviously, your tweets dictate that you lost a lot of money with the Devils. Who are you going with this week here with BetStamp?
Well, I lost with the Rangers tonight. So I did win with the Devils, I will say, last night. I lost with the Rangers tonight. But looking ahead to tomorrow, if you like the Kings, they are currently opening as favorites right now. And if you like the Kings as favorites right now, BetMGM, DraftKings, they both have them at minus 145. Or if you're somebody that only has a FanDuel account, you're paying minus 152. And it may not seem like a lot, but over the course of a season, that adds up. And the idea of getting better odds and just you do it when you go to the grocery store. That chicken costs that chicken costs 5 cents cheaper. I'm going to grab that one. It just makes total sense. Why don't you do it when you bet? And the more this stuff gets legal across this country, that's what you should be looking to do. It helps you be a smarter bettor.
Are you more loyal to your money, or are you more loyal to these billion-dollar groups? BetStamp's got you covered. Your money goes farther with BetStamp. So download the app now. Hockey Royalty is the code. Get started. If you want to DM Joe on how to get some extra money, he can help you out there.
Don't follow me early in the season. I'm having a rough start to the season, but it'll get better.
He'll get better.
Don't
let's go to the players.
Devils.
Let's go to the players of the week. Obviously, Bryn Lemieux, Russell. Do you want to pad him any more for that, or you feel like you did him justice?
I think I did him justice. I mean, he's not producing offensively. I think he had one goal though. Trying to bring up his stats right here.
He's got an assist too.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, he's playing his role, and obviously, there's other players that have been great to start the year, but I think it goes unnoticed of what Lemieux has been doing, and not to mention, it'd be remiss if I didn't mention what Lazat has been doing with him too, because those two, like we just talked about the pairs, those two have kind of been a solid pair for the Kings on the fourth line for almost a season and a half, or not a half to start this year too. So I'm really happy with what I'm seeing from Lemieux, and I'm with Joe though. I just hope he does limit the whole like after the whistle stuff a little bit.
Joe, swinging over to you, my man. Who's your BetStamp player of the week?
This may never happen again where I go back-to-back defensemen, because I had Doughty last week. And unless Jacob Moverari comes up, I don't know when we're going to have I'm going to pick a defenseman again. But I'm going to throw some love to Sean Durzi. He is playing his off wing. He's being asked to play his off wing. And in the last 3 games, which is what we're looking at here, the BetStamp player of the week, 61.7 Corsi for it 5-on-5, 69.8% expected goals. He's got a goal last game against Tampa Bay. It was his against Washington. Now I'm drawing a blank. They're blending together, Russ. But Sean Durzi, I'm going to send a little love his way. Him and Matt Roy have been really, really good together. Money Puck put out a tweet this morning in expected goals for pairs that have played at least 50 minutes together. I think it's 50. They're in the top 20, top 15. So really, really think that Sean Durzi, who is a little bit of a whipping boy after the first couple of games, I think he's really played well the last week or so.
People forget this is his second year in the NHL. And I understand a lot of the criticism is probably warranted because he does make some kind of dumb mistakes. I mean, pointing out the Vegas game, but God, for him to be playing his left side after really no one expected him to make the jump last year, and now he's coming into this year, he's averaging over 21 minutes a night, playing really good hockey. It's just all areas of the ice. He's quarterbacking the second power play unit. I'm so glad that you mentioned him as your player of the week, because I'm right behind you on that. I think a lot of the criticism that Sean Durzi gets is so unnecessary because he's playing so good for a player that has really not a lot of experience, NHL experience under his belt yet. So I'm glad that you mentioned it.
All right, this is going to be all puff in the chest here for me and toot my own horn. And my player of the week is Brant Mother effing Clark. And it looks like he's here to stay. So the hype train, grease the rails, because we're going a full 82 on this MFer. I'm so pumped because he gets the assist. His offensive acumen showed in the last game. You saw it, but he couldn't finish earlier in the year. Got 2 points so far this season. Phenomenal start, and I think it was the perfect 9 games for him to make the statement to be here all year long. Now, obviously, that hasn't been released by the team or anything like that. This is just your boy here at Hockey Royalty laying it down, saying that it's going to happen because I believe it's going to happen. He just looks great. I mean, in his defensive stuff, I've seen him float a little bit in the defensive zone, but the whole defense hasn't looked good. But he's made some plays there where he's needed to be. His hockey IQ is through the roof. I think his defensive hockey IQ is there. His body isn't able to react yet in his young tenure in the NHL. But the offense is going there. If it wasn't for Joe's player of the week, he'd probably be power play 2 more often than not.
Mm-hmm.
He's just doing a phenomenal job. And I think that he's going to progress more as a player in the third pairing of the Kings than he ever would in the OHL with no matter how minutes you throw at him. He's going to really blossom. And whether this was because of Clark or it was of his decision by Blake or T-Mac, I got to give them credit a little bit because I've been so against the fact of not throwing some of these players into situations and seeing what you have. They threw Clark in. He answered the call. He answered the bell, came ready to play. He's going to play more than his 9 games, in my opinion. He sat the first game. He hasn't sat since. So he's doing something right there. Clarky boy, 92, most likely going to be my next jersey to buy if you keep playing like this, buddy. And he's my Bet Stamp player of the week. Come at you. Come at you, boy.
Can we break down that goal? I mean, first of all, the Arthur Kaliev play to go up take the puck up the wall and then make a perfect backhand pass to Clark. But for Brent Clark, a player that's his 7th game in the NHL, to stare down a goalie in Andre Vasilevsky, you haven't scored a goal yet, and your first instinct isn't just you're wide open. You're 5 feet from the net. Most rookies in the NHL, probably 95% of the rookies in the NHL, would immediately shoot that puck. Brent Clark's eyes were directly staring at Andre Vasilevsky, and in the corner of his eye, he saw Blake Lizotte wide open and threw him a perfect no-look pass, and Blake Lizotte potted it home. That's just incredible awareness for a 19-year-old skater in the NHL. It was ridiculous play, and I think if he hadn't solidified his spot on the NHL roster for the whole season, that play alone has definitely done it for Rob Blake. It was beautiful.
This really brings it full circle because, Brandon, this is exactly what we talked about earlier, and you asked the question, like, how, isn't hockey? It's so fast. You don't really have time. Brant Clark knew where he was going with that puck. I would bet before when he started tapping his stick, he saw the play happening ahead of time. So he got the puck. He waited. He froze everybody. He froze Vasilevsky because Vasilevsky now has to honor him. We got a little bit of help of Ian Cole going swimming a little bit. Not really sure exactly what he was doing, but we'll take it. And he, again, just looks off, makes a great pass, the poise, the patience. And to your point, Russ, other rookies like would Quentin Byfield have had that poise, slow everything down? That is exactly what we were talking about with Byfield earlier. Clark is a special player. He's a special mind. That's why he's here. That's why he should stay here.
I'll give Byfield credit, though, because he did make a play that was kind of similar to that when I think it was against Anaheim, when he made a similar kind of dish to Kaliev. I think he got the puck right in the middle of the ice and dished it off to Kaliev right to the right. But all aside, I mean, it was just an incredible
Clark is
play.
my player of the week, Russ.
sorry. I know. I'm kind of taking it a little bit, but I mean, I'm watching that play happen in front of me, and I was like, dude, that's just unreal patience and awareness by Clark, especially against Tampa Bay. I mean, the game hasn't been too big for him, and it's incredible. I think the Kings found themselves a really good player in Brant Clark. He's going to be outstanding.
You look at a lot of things, and some scouts. I know Craig Button had him 2 overall in that draft. The offensive IQ, you can't replace that, and the defensive stuff, maybe or maybe not, will work it out to an elite level or even a good level, but you can't replace what he has on the offensive side of the puck. And that's what you're drafting him to be. You're drafting him to be a one right side defenseman, heir apparent to Drew Doughty. And by all the small sample size of the 8 games, I don't want to pump his tires too much there, but he's looked the part. He's fits in the NHL for what his role is being asked to be right now. I'm so proud of him. And even then, like that's his big moment. He dissected that play, when talking about it, he's like, oh yeah, the defenseman bit and this guy, and I toss it over here. Like he talked about that play like he was a 9-year vet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it really just good in the locker room, good in the mic. He's excited to play hockey. He just loves the sport, and you need those guys on the team. Drew Doughty brings life to an organization when he talks on the mic. You get those Drew Doughty moments, but that's what fans talk about. Fans are going to be talking about Brandt Clarke for years, about what he brings in the locker room, out on the ice for the brand. And I can't wait. I think I'm saying it right now, this is the most excited I've been for any prospect ever for the Kings. And I think it's well warranted.
Well, and this is the thing too, is like with Drew Doughty, I mean, yeah, he's got the funny quotes and all that, but he's always kind of shied away from the spotlight. He doesn't like the microphone in front of him. He doesn't like being around the media. Brandt Clarke loves the spotlight, and he borders on the line of confidence and cockiness, but he's not arrogant whatsoever on the ice. I think McClellan mentioned that. And he's also got sneaky size to him. We talked about with Kapari. Brandt Clarke's 6'2". And you don't really notice that. I mean, when I walk around the locker room, you see Brandt Clarke walk around, and you're like, wow, he's huge. He's a big kid. And he's only 19 years old. He's going to get even bigger. I mean, so it's been a great start to the season for Clarke, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with a full NHL season under his belt.
All right, let's swing it over here. Make it a rain segment. We'll dip into the rain here. So you look at the Rain are right now 5 games played, which is tied for Bakersfield with the most games played in the Pacific Division. They have 4 wins, 1 loss, total of 8 points, tied with the San Jose Barracuda, who are 4-0. But out most goals in the division, we saw that coming. 22. They've given up 10, 4-1. They are steamrolling people right now, left and right. What are we seeing from the Rain here? I mean, I think this is well deserved. I mean, you don't even have Martin Kromiak playing most games, and they're still putting teams away. Quinn leading, like I think he's second in the team in points. So, what are you seeing from this team, Joe?
I was just going to mention Alan. I think it's Quine, by the way. I think it's Alan Quine, and I think we kind of did a disservice by glossing over when they acquired him. This is a player that's got NHL experience. He had a huge overtime goal. It was like a double or triple overtime goal for the Islanders on a power play in the playoffs in the 15-16 season, something like that. Like he has some NHL, some games under his belt, including playoffs. So I think that, we probably overlooked that as a signing and where he might fit in this lineup, but he's playing top 6 minutes. He's producing, as you mentioned, Randon, he's putting, I think he's got 7 points. He's at 7 points in 6 games. He's I think he's added a bit to that offense that maybe we didn't anticipate. Maybe we thought that was going to be Kromiak, but right now it's him. So that's one big positive. We knew we were going to get out of TJ Tynan, and he does what he does. But I'm going to say, this isn't a surprise, not like surprise, but like Phoenix Copley's playing again tonight. And he's played great.
CJ agrees with you. Copley's playing fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, full marks. Like, again, another guy that we kind of like, we're very meh about. He's playing really well to his credit. And so has Villalta. He's only played in the 2 games has Villalta, but he's got a .938 save percentage, so it's certainly much better than 2 games, right? So not going to go crazy, but they're getting good goaltending, which is huge for this team, because if they're going to get that, then they're going to be lights out. So I think that's encouraging to see the early returns between the pipes.
I think if this team didn't win the Calder Cup, it'd be a disappointment the way they're set up. I mean, TJ Tynan looks like he's ready to win his 3rd straight MVP. He's got 8 points in 5 games already. Samuel Fagimo's lighting it up. Rasmus Pari has another goal tonight. I believe Taylor Ward also scored again tonight.
Quine's got 2 assists today.
Yeah, and Quine's got 2 assists. They also added Toby Basson, who's got AHL playoff experience last year under his belt, playing for, I think it was Laval Rocket.
Yep.
I think he played like up to the semifinals or the finals for them. So, yeah, I mean, this is a team that's set up to win, and you just kind of hope that there's not a lot of injuries on the Kings roster to kind of decimate the Ontario Reign roster like it was last year. Because, I I mean, if it weren't for all the injuries on the Kings, this team probably would have made a longer run. And they're getting an Alex Turcotte back soon, who's skating with the team in a non-contact form. So, man, it's just you're getting one good player after another, and they're looking good to start. It should be a fun team to watch. I'm going to have to make my way out to the Inland Empire and catch a couple games.
I mean, you look at the
to get a
third line
hotel with that drive.
Yeah, exactly.
The third line with Akil Thomas, Madden, and Dudas, and then Hellenius is anchoring the fourth line, and you have NHL experience in Wagner. And then just look at the decor, right? With Bjornfoot and Spence, Moverari, Grans, and Bisson Gauntz is today. Really what it comes down to is the goaltending. Is Villalta going to take a step? And is Copley, he's playing great. If they're going to get goaltending like this, yeah, they're going to be really – the only thing that will slow them down is injuries.
Until Copley gets called up to the NHL.
Yeah, totally Wade Peterson.
Totally kidding.
I think interesting for me, my expectations this year was, they were going to compete, but it was still going to be a little bit of a developmental league. Like you're going to get Nusayainen, you're going to get Chromiak, you're going to get a lot of these new guys in to see what they have. And they brought in these vets, and I thought they were kind of just like afterthought ads, but they've been playing a huge role so far. And it seems like the Kings are building this team to be legit contenders with that veteran leadership in Quine and Tynan and et cetera, with a lot of this young, fiery youth. I mean, you're looking at Kupari's a point per game player so far this season. And I think it's just interesting to see how I thought this team would be so far in a small sample size, but it seems like they're going for it. It seems like they're going for the jugular right away out of the gate. Not a developmental team. They're not about progression. They're not about doing whatever is right they're going for wins, which is fine by me because you can also learn and develop by playing deeper in the playoffs, which will help a lot of these young guys like Fagemo and Kupari, et cetera.
Well, yeah, and if they're also winning a lot of games, then you can kind of create a little bit more cushion in the standings. Then you can get guys like Chromiak and Norsianen in a little bit more games, get them acclimated to the AHL ice a little bit more. So, this is going to be a fun team to watch. If you don't have the AHL TV package, I highly recommend getting it because this team is putting up goals left and right, and they're an exciting team to watch too. So, highly recommend.
I'm going to add one thing from a prospect standpoint, a little not so for the Reign. If you're somebody that is nervous about the Kings goaltending throughout the system, do not look at the numbers for David Hrenek and Juho Markkanen. It's only 4 games combined, so don't go crazy. But it ain't pretty so far. But it's good to see that the Reign's going well.
Lucas Perique I think he got one of the stars of the week I think he's in the ECHL or the AHL. I'm not sure, but maybe the AHL. But that's a weird. Yeah, it's weird. I think he's still under contract with the Kings and not playing for the Reign. So you hope he doesn't leave the Kings and all of a sudden develop into a solid NHL goalie, because that would be kind of tough pill to swallow.
So I'm looking at the special teams. There's always an ad. I mean, obviously the Reign were number 1 last week when we talked. Dropped down to number 5, 25%. They've struggled, but they raised their PK numbers up to 83, which outside of the Barracuda, which are on a weird streak, they've been on 20 times shorthanded, haven't given up a power play goal yet this season. But 83.3% on the PK for the Reign. Now, you mentioned a lot of more defensive stalwarts in there with Moverari and Bjornfoot, et cetera, et cetera. Is this something you think is the parts are greater than the sum, right? I mean, you're getting more defensive guys in there. You're getting more guys with experience in there that the power play goes up. Is that something that's positive for you? Or are you thinking this, hey, the power play has gone down. Is this, is this something bad for the team? Or is it just, hey, this is 3 games, something happened, let's get a bigger sample size? Yeah,
I'm not worried about the power play. As long as Jordan Spence and TJ Tynan are on the power play, Samuel Fagemo, have zero concerns about the power play with those guys that are running it. So, but similar to, listen, it's not that crazy to see, oh man, look at the penalty kills playing better. Oh, look at, they're getting some saves. Like that tends to go hand in hand sometimes. Like it's not, sometimes it's the formation, sometimes it's the penalty kill itself. Sometimes you're getting more saves than you were getting before. So I think part of the reason the penalty kill is playing a little bit better is you're getting some pretty good goaltending here.
Who's their head coach? I'm totally kidding. I don't want to throw this on Sturm. Yeah, like it's Marco Sturm. It's not on him at all. It's still early in the year. Wait for them to develop a little bit, and yeah, when you got the weapons like Fagimo and Kupari and Tynan, this team will figure it out.
I want to throw it out there a little bit here for Akil Thomas. 5 games, 4 points, but he's a +7. And I really like Akil Thomas's game. Hard on him last year. It was well-deserved sternness from me. But he responded well. He listens to our pod. He responded well. But +7, and, it shows that he's a high-level Swiss Army knife. Like, you could put him in any situation, and he can flourish. I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be a middle 6 guy on this Kings roster for years to come when more spots open up to where you can plug and play. Like I said that Jared Anderson Dolan is that guy, but I think you could think of Akil Thomas like an Alex Iafallo with more offensive upside, to where you don't have to worry about him defensively. He can play whatever position on the ice. He's going to have that offensive upside going in there. And I know Iafallo's got 5 points this season, but generally when you're looking at his career, he's been more renowned for his defensive acumen. I'm really liking where Akil Thomas is coming in, and he's really kind of flying under the radar for a prospect to watch when the Kings are cup bound, so to speak.
Yeah, I think he's one of my my favorite prospects. I think in the Kings organization. After watching him as much as I did last year, he really impressed me, and I think if he continues to go along the way he ended last season, that he can be somebody that gets a cup of coffee here in LA if things go awry.
So, I mean, we're up to an hour 40, and we could talk for the Kings for probably another hour 40, but we're gonna wrap it up. Let you guys get on with your night here. As always, thank you guys for joining us in the chat. You can find all of our articles at hockeyroyalty.com. Grab yourself some merch as well. Find us here. Man, I didn't even have the banner going across the bottom there. At @hockey_royalty, at Random Commando 24, at NHL Russell, at JW Paterino. Your DraftKings code is THPN. BetStamp code is Hockey Royalty. New articles coming out all the time. Got some key games coming up starting tomorrow. If you're listening live, or if you're listening on your way to work tonight, grab your beers and sit down and watch a nice game tomorrow for the Kings. Thank you guys coming in. Joe, Russell, always a pleasure talking hockey. Thank you for everybody in the chat answering or asking all your questions, being involved. We love all of our supporters. And most of all, go Kings go.